Welcome, everyone, to Mythstorie, a podcast about myths and history. I am one of your hosts, Bryant, with my permanent guest, co-creator, best mystery writer ever, Cammy. Hey, Cammy.
Hey, Bryant. How are you?
You beat me to it. I'm doing pretty good. June has proven to be quite hectic so far.
Yes, it is.
So it's been wild. We're usually ahead of it. We're not too far behind. I wouldn't say we're really even behind. But yeah, we've got a fun story, though, today. We're going Greek, so it's going to be a little straightforward. I'm not going to rehash a lot of the stuff that I talk about at the end, since we've hit the Greek myth a lot. But we're talking about Iphigenia, which is a nice story that goes to the deep roots of Greek mythology, the Greek story in general. That's what we'll do on Mythstorie. Remember, we pick lots of different tales and topics, people. We'll give you a story. Cammy is going to give you a story of Iphigenia, and then we'll have a little discussion about some of the history behind it. It's a lot of fun. David, one of our big fans, he recommended this to us. How long ago, Cammy?
It was like when he first started listening.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, yeah. This is a great one. We've hit a lot of the big ones, but slowly but surely the small ones like Hercules' brother and stuff like that are coming, and those are really fun. And this is a really cool one too, and I like the evolution of it. So anyway, Cammy, please regale us with your story.
Absolutely. So I used the source Iphigenia et Aulis by Euripides from classics.mit.edu. And I also used an article because that was a play that I had to read. The article.
Cool.
Right.
That's great.
So it was from alcation.com, The Story of Iphigenia in Greek Mythology by Colin Quartermain. Daughter of the great king Agamemnon and Spartan queen Clytemnestra, Iphigenia knew of sacrifice for duty. She spent her days learning the ways of a princess until her uncle's wife, Helen, was kidnapped and taken to Troy by the haughty Paris. Her father readied his fleets and was given command of the armies of Greece, but the men could not sail. The winds fought against them, so the kings held conference and sent their leader to Calchas, the all-knowing, to learn what actions they could take to change fate. He prayed to the divines, and they came back with an answer. Artemis was wounded, not her body, but her pride. There was only one answer: a sacrifice, a human sacrifice, a maiden, the most beautiful and skillful among the daughters of the kings, Iphigenia. Agamemnon looked for other answers, but mortals are helpless to the will of the gods. He even thought of calling back his men rather than lose his favored child, but in the end, his duty outweighed his paternal bonds. He developed a plan with the cunning trickster Odysseus to bring the child to Mycenae so that she might marry the doomed Achilles. But when they arrived to Aulis, the girl was taken from her mother and placed on an altar to Artemis. Calchas, ready for blood, took his knife into the air, but before he could deliver the mortal blow, Artemis herself came down and rescued the child and brought her to her temple to become her favored priestess. Left in her place was a fawn. The wind turned to favor the ships in their journey, and the men went off to seek their fate in Ilium.
Ooh. That's great.
I love how many of these myths that we've done that are like the setup to Troy.
And that's it. That's really what this is about. And I'm not going to rehash a lot because it's a lot of what I've said before. We've done an episode on Troy. That was a lot of fun, I remember. And we did one other one that was really connected to it as well. But yeah, that's really what this kind of boils down to. And what I love about whenever we talk about anything Troy, it's like it's like talking about like Marvel Comics today. I made this connection before, but like for the ancient Greeks, because it's like this, it's so ingrained in their society, and there's this history, and it's like, oh yeah, the Trojan War, and then this happened. It's like, yeah, Spider-Man, he got up with the spider and his uncle, and great power, great responsibility. You know, it's like it's fictional, but it has such like a strict way of like, this is what happened, this is how it is, and especially for Troy, because everyone and their mom tries to draw ties to Troy and their societies to Troy, like in the weirdest ways, which we've also talked about. So yeah, it's a lot of fun though. What's cool, so when looking up this, I had never heard of Iphigenia. A lot of the questions like that Google kind of puts that people ask is like, is she a goddess? Is she divine in that way? Other than being Trojan, no, she's not. But she's important because she's a priestess of Artemis specifically, and her dumb old dad had to go and kill one of the heavenly holy stags of Artemis, and that kind of causes grief. And it's really cool because this set off like a trope, a mythology trope of like a leader having to sacrifice his daughter with like a, you know, he's very stern and he's like, I must do this to do this to win. And then as the, you know, the wife is grieving and crying that this has to happen. And I love when I was looking it up. There's, do you know the website Quora, the question website?
Yeah.
They have a section actually called the Theoi, like theoi.com. And it says that it's a space about the Greek gods for your learning benefit. And this person, Colby Stockton, wrote a great little write-up, like just sort of a modern vernacular write-up of Iphigenia. And it starts off with this. I'll quote what they're saying. This is Colby on Quora's the Theoi section. Iphigenia had the major misfortune of being born into one of the most dysfunctional families of her time. Daughter of one of the worst men to have ever managed to gain immortality by way of the storyteller. Her father was Agamemnon. So her mother was Clytemnestra, a crazy queen to Agamemnon's foolishness. So I love like they really like narrow it down, and it's a lot of fun. I'll try and include it in the notes here because it's a fun little read. Because it continues on beyond this. But I did try to look through Theoi. There was what they showed me was a really pretty Roman fresco painting from the 1st century AD. So it was Roman. It says that it's from the Imperial Roman period. And it's basically the scene in a nutshell where the queen's like crying. Agamemnon's like, I guess. And then 2 soldiers are carrying her, but you see Artemis above and there's a stag coming out. And the description says that the stag is coming out to substitute as a sacrifice for the girl. And I'm like, isn't that how we started this whole mess?
Right.
She's like, no, don't kill her. Take this stag. Wait, well, hold up. Killing a stag is
2 of your
yeah.
stag?
She's like, wait, no, my girl's too good. Never mind. That's one thing though. Like the cult of Iphigenia is now it's attached to the cult of Artemis, which is important. That's how the religions really worked back then. And it's funny. It always happens in June. I start reading this book or listening to the audiobook by Lars Brownworth, Lost to the West, about the Byzantine Empire. And one important part that he talks about is the fall of the pagan religions and the rise of Christianity. And one thing he puts out that I always love is he's saying how Christianity is so appealing because it's one God. There's hundreds of cults. It's so confusing, but it's just like one God, we got this. So, but that's how important the cults were back then, depending on where you were in the, the Greek hemisphere or the Roman hemisphere. There are all these different ways of doing it. But Artemis, goddess of the hunt, really important in general. And the tale of Iphigenia, it's as old as any other story. It was in Homer's work. That's really the baseboard that tells us how old it is. Remember, Homer, this was like anywhere around 800 BC to 1200, even as late as. And ever since then, we do have like Euripides, who you used as a source, excellent playwright in the 400s BC. So even, a few hundred years after Homer, we get these really like straightforward plays that are specifically about her. And that keeps happening for the next 1500, 1700 years as people take, there was a movie made in 2017. What's it called? The Killing of a Sacred Deer is a 2017 film directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. It takes inspiration from the legend. And so people, and there was of course operas named after her, and she's super devoted to this cult of Artemis. She's sort of unfairly, it's unfair. Her dad's a total jerk wad, and she shouldn't have to pay for this, but she willingly does. She's like, no, we have offended her. I must sacrifice myself. So it's really cool to see this trope kind of get born. I'll note, I don't know how far you got into Game of Thrones. If you did, you didn't watch it, did you?
I did watch it, and I got to the episode, the Battle of the Bastards, and I didn't watch that episode. Apparently, it was
No. Yeah, it's tough.
I
There's
didn't watch that.
I'll know you don't worry about watching Game of Thrones because the ending's so bad. But there's an interesting part though where a king has to give up his daughter essentially, or thinks he does, and he does. And it's essentially kind of the same story. He's doing it to appease a god. He does get some help, but it's all for naught in the end. He ends up losing anyway. Spoilers for Game of Thrones. I'm sorry, it's terrible. In the end, it's terrible. But yeah, that's really it in a nutshell. I would really encourage you to look back at our Troy episode. I'm trying to remember. There was one other one that we kind of touched on it too, but the Troy episode's really specific on it, and it was a lot of fun. It's just wild. Like I said, this is like mythology within mythology in a way. Paris. Didn't we talk about Paris?
The Judgment of Paris, and we also talked about the Roman hero. Why can't I think of his name? Aeneas.
Oh yeah, there we go. And yeah, those are two, direct to DVD spinoffs. Those are two direct spinoff of the Trojan stuff. In the Judgment of Paris, like Paris is like one-to-one talking with gods, like they're just chilling. So like the Trojans were super important. It's just kind of crazy how these civilian mortal Trojans were so darn important. When it comes to these histories, but it was incredibly important. So yeah, in a nutshell, Homer is where we get Iphigenia from. That's the beginning source. But of course, the story of the Trojans is even deeper than that in Greek history. So hundreds of centuries into the BCs is where we're at as far as the story goes. It was always important, even to the Roman imperialistic times. They kept talking about her. It was a wonderful trope. Tons of plays were done just about her in the age of antiquity and the Roman Empire. And we saw kind of in the same, like through the Renaissance and then into modern times, we would see operas, tons of movie adaptations and things like that. So it's really, really cool to see this evolution and how people really like stuck to her. One like little note, there's a couple things in Antoninus Liberalis. He actually wrote a Metamorphoses. He was from 100 AD, and in his text, he calls Iphigenia the daughter of Theseus and Helen, raised by Clytemnestra. That one.
Clytemnestra.
There you go. So, and there was also, there's references to someone, Iphianassa, which is speculated to be a name that could be another name for her. Wikipedia talks about it being an older variant of Iphigenia, but there are specific sections in the classic texts where they definitely don't take her as the same person, where they specify that these are different people. So it's kind of interesting there, but there's this kind of debate on if it's the same or different, an older name or a different way of kind of saying the name. Yeah, that's really it. But and then there's this idea as well that she could be have a deeper connection by being the daughter of Theseus and Helen, and was just raised by Agamemnon, which would be wild if she was, because she was the Agamemnon conquered Troy. Wasn't he Spartan, right? King of the Spartans.
Clytemnestra was Spartan. I don't know.
Or his brother, or Agamemnon's brother, was the king of the Spartans. Anyway, yeah. It would bring so if she was the daughter of Helen, that would be really interesting as far as kind of how that goes, the workarounds. But yeah, so really, really fun story here. I liked it a lot. Cammy, thank you for your write up on that. That was a really good way to read it too.
Thank you for your research.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, this is a fun one. It's such an important little blimp. I mean, how many episodes are we going to have that kind of direct to Troy? I never would have thought this. I never would have thought, like, I just thought it was the Trojan War and that was it. I never realized this once we started really getting into the show and looking up this stuff. So everyone, thank you for listening. Let us know what you think. David, thanks for suggesting this ages ago. I'm kind of glad we didn't do it until now, because I don't think I would have fully appreciated those connections. If you haven't listened to the Troy episode. I'll link it I'll put a link for it in the description here. Check it out. It was a lot of fun to talk about. We talked about the city itself. There are like multi layers of the cities that would come over and over again on it, and then some of the other kind of fun stuff around that. So I think that covers it. Cammy, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I don't.
Awesome. Well, everyone, let us know. Mythstorie@gmail.com. You can directly get in touch with us. We have our link tree in the description as well. That takes you to all of our landing pages and social media, all that fun stuff. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.
Oh.